I think it's American influence.
Mm.
Because strange to say it, because America, is the land of free thinking and diversity, or at least used to be. You have this very binary thinking. I think it's come from their political parties because they only have two political parties. So it's either raw capitalism, free market, or state controlled. There's no, central mind. Uh, of course, you should be pragmatic. You should check what works best. So how was the lovely cities of Europe? I can speak most. I've been to the UK. I visited London. I visited Bristol and Oxford, but I'm more familiar with Central Europe. So what built these magnificent cities? Like Prague, Vienna,
Mm.
München,
Yeah,
Paris.
Munich is beautiful. Innsbruck, I'm a big fan of. I lived there. I lived
Yeah.
just outside of Innsbruck for five
Mm,
winters.
yeah. So
Um,
what built these cities was good regulations, and then after that you let the market free. So when I speak of good regulations, the city created the magnificent grid, using classical planning with sight lines, boulevards, hierarchy of streets. The city also played where should public buildings be and religious buildings. The city imposed height regulations. So except for public buildings and religious buildings, all buildings should be like maximum 6 stories or whatever height they said, but usually it's maximum 6 or 7 stories, never higher. And that is also a good. I stray all the time because there's so many good things with the classical, because we had need, of course, we in modern days we need research for everything that everyone knew. But if you live higher than 7 stories, you lose all connection with the street. People get alienated. Children go out less if they live in high rises.
mm.
So if you live closer, maximum 7 stories, you have a meaningful relationship with the street. You can see what's going on. I don't know. You have a kind of different traditional planning in the UK. You have very much row houses. We have like courtyard houses.
Mm.
A courtyard and buildings are around them.
Yeah.
Also continental Europe.
And
So you can look in the courtyard, you can see the children are playing or something, and then go in. If you live on the 40th floor, you cannot see anything, what's happening on the ground. Um, so back to the subject. I stray because there are so many. Nothing is by chance in the classical city. Why it's so great. Uh, so you have height restrictions, you have the grid in place, you have the public buildings in place, and you create plots and you divide the plots. And it's not one developer that build all the buildings. Each plot is an individual building, and that individual building is not free for all. It must follow height regulations, and it follows the classical tradition. Okay, that wasn't an option. There was nothing else than the classical tradition. When they thought. But you see, even if you have different buildings, they are in harmony with each other. They are different. If you look at a street in London or Paris, or maybe not Paris because it's a more uniform city, let's say Stockholm or London or Belfast, there may be buildings from different ages on a single street, but still they form a whole. They form a harmonic whole.
can you see that? That's from your Twitter. I
Yeah,
wanted to pull this up for an example for people of the type of architecture you mean. Like this is very prevalent
in
in
continental Europe.
in
Yeah.
Innsbruck. I used to live in a building like this
Mm,
actually.
mm. And I'm a very much courtyard urbanism. If you want to explore that subject, I can explain why. Um,
Yeah, that'd be
but
great. Is there what's the best thing for me to look
yeah,
at
you
so I
can look
can?
at that building, and I can explain, why
Yeah,
why I'm a
yeah. Let's just stick to
courtyard
that one,
urbanist.
please.
Yeah. So first of all, you have grid making. There's a very different urban planning tradition in the UK. Okay, you have cities like London and central cores. You have grids, but otherwise you have like endless row house. How I understand
Yeah, terrace.
tradition, UK, your
Yeah.
terrace houses. In continental Europe, you have grids, more classical grids, and you have these courtyard buildings. The courtyard building is an amazing invention because what you get, especially now with these in modern times where you repurpose the courtyards, and now with new buildings, this is a new block that was built. You modernize the courtyard a bit. So what you have here outside is the bustling city, with noise and people walking around and parties, cars, whatever. But inside is totally soundproof. So what you get is that every building block get this private, green, silent island. So outside is the city, and inside you have your calm private greenery. It's not dangerous to let your children. If you check, if you go further down, I think you should be able to see photos of this building. No, that's another one. But if you go back to that one, sorry, I can't show on street level, but I can explain at least.
Yeah.
So what you have here is a large green courtyard.
Yeah.
There you can have your kids. There you can have barbecue. There you can have everything, and you will not notice that there's a 4 million metropole on the outside. Yeah. That's how you bring families back to the city. Also, this is also very important. Where do you have your balconies? One thing that I hate with modernist buildings is all the balconies on the facade, because they are never used. Because in traditional setting, a majority of balconies are towards the courtyard. Why? Because it's private and silent. No one sits, or very few people at least, sit on balconies facing the street. They don't do this because it's noisy. So when you sit on your balcony, in the morning sun and drink your coffee, you don't want all the noise from the city. Also, it's not private. It's not that people are unpolite, but if you sit on your balcony on the front facade, of course people will get curious, passerbys, and stare at you. And it feels kind of irritating that you read your coffee and people stare at you. If you sit on your balcony at the courtyard, it will only be people, even if you don't know your neighbors perfectly, they will know that they will both be less curious, and they will respect your privacy because you have some kind of, relationship. So in that sense, you can sit in your pajamas towards the courtyard. It's quiet, it's green, and it's private. So you get privacy. You can choose when you are private, and you can choose when you're public. You got a silent green island where you can put, of course, you should take your kids to park and outdoors, but if they just want to play outside, if they're small, with playing with sand or such, then they can go to this courtyard. And because the height is maximum, this height is 6 stories, you can look from your courtyard balcony and look down and see that everything's all right. And then you can shout at them when there's dinner. So perfect.
Yeah. Well, you also probably wouldn't want it too tall, or you wouldn't get as much sun in there.
No, you wouldn't.
And I was just thinking the air quality as well on your balcony would be much better if you're facing inwards than facing out. You're not getting the direct emissions from the cars or buses or whatnot as well. Yeah.
Even with electric cars, you will get, the tires rip up particles.
Yeah. Huge amounts of air pollution is actually is the rubber from the tires. I didn't know this till recently. That blew my mind.
So that's why if I, can be a fanatic when it comes to city planning, it's continental European courtyard urbanism, but also where you update the court, because courts, they were built originally, they created courtyards to get in sun and light into the apartments. They still do that, function very well, but the court itself, you did laundry and you had toilet there. We don't need to do laundry and you don't have your toilet in the courtyard, So now you can have like a private green island there. So that's like an upgrade, an evolution of the classical tradition.
That's amazing.
So yeah. And this is the way to bring families, because all cities want to bring families back to the city center. We don't just want, people with no kids or singles in their 20s. We want, all demographics to be able to live in the city, because it makes a much better city. It makes a more interesting city. It gets a more lively city, not a city with people that are 40s, in their 50s, in their 60s, in their 30s, Not only, young singles that want to party and then they move to the suburbs. So if you offer, some of the conveniences that exist in the suburb, silence, some privacy, some private greenery, and of course, modern spacious apartments. Yeah. I think many will choose the city center because, the city center, especially now, when the air quality is getting better in most cities.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why not? It's not like the 70s. My father used to tell that you could in Stockholm, because of the traffic, you could taste lead in your mouth, because of the gasoline had lead in it. We don't do that anymore, luckily. And, there's much less traffic and there's more bicycling. So the city has gotten healthier to live in. So why not, if you can move, then you can have 2 kids, 3 kids, even 4 kids, and live a good life in the city center. You don't need to live in a villa in the suburbs.
Yeah. Yeah,
even if I'm not against people living in a villa in the suburbs. It's just that there should be an equal good option. You should not force people to move to the suburbs. They should be able to live in the city center if they want that, if they find that these things are good for them.
Hey everyone, thanks for making it right the way to the end of the podcast. I love that you tuned in this long. Do me a favor, hit subscribe, because 80% of you bastards are not subscribing, but you're watching my videos. See you next time.